Guess that's all the questions we have for you, and thank you very much.
I'll
you're going to
stick
speak of
around
elk
for just
herd?
another minute.
Okay, my
Yes,
fault.
sir.
Go ahead, my fault.
So on the elk, and I want to recognize Steve Bennett, who's in the back of the room. Steve, would you mind waving at us up here? Steve Bennett is with us, and he's our Region 4 elk biologist. And everything that I'm about to share with you is based off of his expertise and the other staff there in Region 4. So I appreciate him being here in case there's questions that I can't adequately address. But with that in mind, what the agency is recommending is that there be the temporary closure of elk zones 1 and 4, and to keep that from minimizing the hunt opportunity, and to add 2 elk zones, which would be Braden Mountain and Tackett Creek. So the only difference based on this recommendation is that 2 of the hunters who are lucky enough to have this opportunity would have the option of 2 different zones, and the other 2 would be temporarily closed for this next hunt.
Commissioner Cannon, do you have a question?
Maybe you said it and I wasn't listening. If that's the case, forgive me. Just as a point of clarification, why are we recommending that those be temporarily closed?
It's because so much harvest has occurred there over the past couple of years that there's the need to not harvest any more bulls in there temporarily.
Okay, sir.
To help with recruitment.
If you said that, I apologize.
I did not.
All right. Thanks for the clarification.
Thank you.
Just one more point of clarification. We're still going to have the same number of hunters. They're still going to have the same opportunity. It's just going to be in a different area.
That is correct.
Okay, good to go.
Okay, and that's not something we're going to vote on today, correct? Right. Any questions for Chuck Ford? All right. Thank you very much for your time and presentation.
Thank you. I'm not sure who's following me up, but hopefully you've got it.
I have a question first, still while we're on big game management. I'd like to discuss black bears just a little bit, and I'm not sure if Mr. Gibbs or Mr. Sweeney, excuse me?
Bears will be coming up. We're moving to turkeys, and then bears will be after turkeys.
All right. I thought when I was looking down through there, I thought it was just WMAs and all. It's my fault. I thought we were getting off that. All right.
We're still on the big game talk.
Okay. We'll proceed on then with Mr. Applegate then.
Okay, so what we're recommending for this year for turkey changes is not a lot for the 2015, and this will be the fall season recommendations for this fall. What we're looking at is closing the fall season in 4 counties: Lincoln, Franklin, Moore, and Coffee. These are all in Region 2. And then we want to reduce the fall turkey bag limit from 6 to 3 in, I think it's about 10 counties there. Bedford, Cheatham, Davidson, Dixon, Hickman, Macon, Marshall, Murray, Montgomery, Robertson, Rutherford, Smith, Sumner, Trousdale, Williamson, and Wilson. Now I can take a breath. So that was a long list. And that's our recommendation.
Yeah. Commissioner Woodson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Would you talk me through why the reduction in the fall turkey bag limit for the counties that are listed from 6 to 3?
Okay, if I could, I'd just like to defer to the Region 2 folks that developed this recommendation. Yeah, Tabitha, maybe Russ.
Great.
Whoever.
We just need this on the record so that everybody knows what's going on, so thank you.
All right, you're welcome. I'm Tabitha Lavico. I'm the Southern Biologist for Region 2. The counties that we're closing down along the southern tier, we already have closed Giles, Lawrence, and Wayne. due to comments from the public, number one, where they say they're not seeing birds like they used to. The harvest has shown a downward trend. These counties also have shown a downward trend. And in the 3 counties, Giles, Lawrence, and Wayne, 3 years ago, we cut the fall harvest in half, then we went to 1, and we closed it last year, and we've actually seen either a stabilization or an uptick in their harvest. So we're hoping that that will do the same in these other counties, just until we can see what's going on with the population.
So can you describe a little more fully the reduction in those counties? The closure, I'm familiar with Lincoln, Franklin, Moore, and Coffey's issue. I'm less familiar with the reduction from Bedford through Wilson counties in terms of, can you talk a little bit more about what the downtick has looked like? And how significant is it?
Well, it varies by county. We do have some that have had some drastic turn downs. We have some that are still kind of stable, but they're showing a downward trend. Like I said, we're not sure what's going on in the counties in Region 2, and so we're kind of doing it as a precaution right now. We're in the second year of a 2-year study for those southern counties, and we're hoping that'll shed some light on some things, but just until then, we think it will bolster the harvest a little bit and just keep our populations steady.
First, thank you for answering my question, Tabitha. If I could, between now and the next meeting, get the data on those counties where the limits would change from 6 to 3?
Sure.
I would, by county. Thank you, I really appreciate that.
Anything else?
Are you doing that off a reduction in harvest numbers? I mean, you're seeing a reduction in harvest numbers or
Harvest
actual-
numbers, we don't have any population numbers.
So you don't have any actual population?
All we can go by is by harvest.
So really, if they had a bad weather, that could have been.
Weather is a big issue. Last year opening weekend, we had basically a monsoon. It was raining sideways, and we have looked at those numbers and
Or
compared
they
those.
could be like me and just can't call one in.
That's a
Mr. Chairman,
possibility
actually,
too, operator error.
I live in one of those counties, so the unsuccessful hunter ratio is increasing now that, some of us are in those communities, so.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for Mr. Applegate? If not, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Hi. All right, I'm Joyce Sweeney again. Good to be back. Oh, thanks. Is that better? All right. All right. So there's a couple things, simple things, that we recommend changing for the bear in the big game proclamation. If you can see this map, I think the easiest color to see, which is fortunate, is the bright blue. And that is the Bear Hunt Zone T, which stands for transition. And that's where we kind of introduced a new opportunity last year. And the thing we'd like to change about this zone is expand it a little bit. And if you look down at the very bottom, you'll see Hamilton County is not all blue. And what we'd like to do is make it all blue. Right now in the big game proc, it says east of Highway 64. And we recommend to take the east of Highway 64 out and include all of Hamilton County. There have been some bear nuisance issues on the other side of Highway 64. And so we just like to expand that zone to include all of Hamilton County. And the other recommendation that we have for the big game proc concerning bear is to change around some dates for the bear dog training that happens in Bear Hunt Zone 3. And that's the dark gray zone. And essentially that comes because we'd like to match it up with what South Cherokee has for those dates. And those dates in South Cherokee have changed because the U.S. Forest Service wants us to not have that happening during Labor Day. And so the date adjustment really has only resulted in the loss of one of those training days to account for that Labor Day conflict. Are there any questions?
Yeah, do you have a slide that would show the bear reserves within that range? Or can you get us one for the next meeting, please?
Sure.
If you would. There's four, can you point them out? I can't, it's just so far, I can't see.
Okay,
what-
I can tell you. Can you see my? No, you can't. Oh, okay. Here is. Can you see my little pointy thing? Well. Okay. Follow the arrow. All right.
Let the record reflect that the pointy thing is now on the screen so that we've got that going. That's,
I've lost my arrow. See, if I don't use it, I lose it. Okay. All right. The orange, this little orange, my arrow disappeared. Here it is. Okay. Where my arrow is, that's the Ocoee Bear Reserve. Going north, we turn to the next orange spot. That is the Tellico Bear Reserve. We're going over the Great Smoky Mountains in green, which acts like a bear reserve. And then here we hit the Andrew Johnson Bear Reserve. And then here we hit the Unicoi Bear Reserve. It's way, well, I lost my arrow again.
So my question is, and what I'd like for the agency to do is have some discussion, because I'm getting a lot of calls, and some of them are directed by representatives, that, like Kettlefoot, I believe is 27,000 acres, of which over 6,000 is private land. And so I'd like for there to be some discussion about, do we need to restrict coon hunting and squirrel hunting on the 6,000 acres of public land? Because I have private owners that say I can't even, of private land. I'm not asking to decrease the bear reserve, I'm just asking, can there be some discussion for people that own private land to be able to hunt coons and squirrels during the bear season?
Yeah, and, you know, we received that request as well, and we talked about it a little bit in our season-setting meeting. But the one thing that we want to do as an agency is if we're going to address private lands, we want to address it in all the bear reserves. And we've talked with the Forest Service, the bulk of the land is going to be U.S. Forest Service property, and they want to have a conversation as well. So a week from today, we're having our annual co-op meeting with the Forest Service, and we have on the agenda to set a date for that meeting and determine what participants will be involved in that and start that process. But it's going to take quite a bit of time. You can't just do that in one meeting. We're probably looking at 2-3 meetings minimum over the next year to discuss that. And the thing you run into, and we don't, you know, we can get some good maps. I can get you some good maps that show how the private land lays within the Forest Service, and it's not that critical when it's just on the edge, but when you get these big sections that carve up into the center and you get these horseshoe-shaped issues, that's when you start really having impacts on how the bear reserves function, because once those dogs get in there and they run, they'll run the bears out and they don't function as well. So a lot of conversations coming up, and we'll be talking about it.
What has been the effect in the South Cherokee where they finally started letting a 2-dog limit for coon hunters? Has there been a lot of pressure on the bears?
Well, I'll let Kirk or Ben mention that, but one thing that you have to remember about South Cherokee, those hunts do not occur until after all the bear hunting is complete.
Understand
okay?
that, yeah.
So at that point, once the bear season is over, it's not as critical. But they've only been doing that for a couple of years.
Right.
The other issue, the main difference between North and South Cherokee, those two reserves, the South Cherokee is pretty much, I'm going to throw a number out there, 95% public and 5% or less private, where the north end, it's a lot more scattered, as you know, being up there. And you have lots of private land scattered in these big, long swaths of Cherokee. So the lay of the public and private, it makes a big difference in how you manage those reserves.
So are you concerned that if a person with 2 dogs hunting coons is going to run bears off the reserve?
That's the primary concern it doesn't function as a bear reserve, because if the dogs are in there, and a raccoon dog will run a bear just as good as a bear dog will. They're in there and they run the bears out, and then they're susceptible to harvest outside the reserve. So that's what we have to look at and consider.
Well, I mean, and can you, in your discussions, could you consider something like a time limit, like saying they have to quit at midnight or something? Give the bears
I think
chance
just about everything's going to be on the table.
Okay,
when
well, I
we
just
talk
want to be
about it.
sure that it's in a discussion, because I get,
Right.
that's the biggest question I'm getting
Correct.
back home, so.
Yeah.
And I know, is Chief Radachak still here? You've been there, you've seen it, you've climbed those mountains. It's just amazing to me to think that coon hunters are gonna scatter the bears that much, but.
I've lost 30-some pounds since the last meeting.
Well, I mean, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I'm just saying that the terrain is such that where the bears are, I'm not sure your coon hunters are getting back in there where the bears are. That's just my opinion. But I'd
Once
like,
again, we're going to look at it, look
Okay.
at topo maps, and then, you know, a lot of these bear reserves, John Gregory reminded me, you know, a lot of these reserves were done in conjunction with the Tri-State Bear Study years ago, with North Carolina and Georgia, and South Carolina is involved in that now. So, you know, North Carolina has their reserves as well, and because we manage bears on a geographic range, because the bears in North Carolina use Tennessee and vice versa. So, you know, we're going to be looking at what they're doing on their reserves, what kind of conversations they're having. So there's a lot to do regarding that. We will be working on that starting a week from today.
well, when you come back for the next meeting, could you kind of give me an update on how those meetings went?
Well, if it's scheduled, so we're going to schedule it next week. If I don't know if it'll be prior to the next commission meeting, but I will get you some maps that show the private
Okay.
and public land, how it lays.
And it'd be nice to know depredation permits on private land too.
Okay.
All right, thank you very much. Any questions about bears besides me?
Just,
I
The-
have
the
just
re-
one more thing.
the reason we're changing the dates, I mean, Forest Service trumps us on dates. Even if we didn't change it, the Forest Service would say no bear hunting.
Right,
So
and one thing I
that's-
wanted to tell you, when you look at the copy of the proclamation that you've got right now, it's not highlighted in red. And that will be in future copies, but the copy you're looking at, you won't find it highlighted.
Very much.
Thank you.
At this time, before we move on to the wildlife management area hunting seasons, there's been a request for a break.
I'll second that motion. So, let's take a 15-minute break and come back